we'll go ahead and do this one, I think. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. All right, this could be good. All right, I think we can do this. This one's like a follow-up to the whole Nick Shirley thing, because you guys know that, Nick Shirley has been getting, like, attacked a lot lately, right? Since he put out his video, they have been coming after Nick Shirley a lot. Oh, well, he said he's had to hire security because he's been receiving death threats. Well, apparently CNN has tried to confront him. So this is what's his name? Warren Smith. So Warren Smith put out this video, I think it was yesterday, about, like, basically CNN doing their level best to try and come after him. And was this one from yesterday or is this today? No, this is today. Okay, this is new. Thank you, Red Play. Thank you for the gifted. So yeah, this is CNN tried to pull a gotcha on Nick Shirley, and, like, they're not the only ones. Like, a lot of people are desperately trying to come after Nick. CNN is one of them. By the way, yes, I am aware that the Senate Oversight Committee is, I don't know if it was an invitation or an actual order, but the Senate Oversight Committee wants the governor of Minnesota in front of them to answer questions about what's happening in Minnesota with the fraud, which, by the way, more and more frauds are starting to come out. I don't know if he's going to talk about that in this video. I don't know if Ward's going to talk about that in this video, but we're now seeing more about, like, I think there was a thing about Boston, where there was something like, I can't even remember what the amount is. It was like 400 or 4,000, like, private homes. Yeah, Ohio too. Like, private homes in various different states are like classified as daycare centers, but they're actually just homes, and they're receiving funding from the government. So, like, this is going to blow the fuck up in multiple states. Like, but the fact that that Nick's video went so viral, you're now hearing about more basically YouTube journalists that are actually doing journalism are now uncovering multiple states that have thousands of private homes that are being classified as daycare centers when they're not daycare centers, but they're receiving government funding for being daycare centers. So this is blowing up in terms of massive, widespread corruption from the daycare thing alone throughout the state or throughout the country.
Baby.
And it's just this is like we're finally getting eyes on it. So let's just see just how terribly CNN tried to gotcha.
This is just the beginning. This is going to get worse. Their target is set on Nick Shirley.
We showed you guys what was happening, and then you guys can go ahead and make your own analysis.
We're coming so we can make our own analysis. Are you 100% sure you're true?
I don't even know what that means. Are you 100% sure you are true?
Yeah, I am 100% sure I'm true.
CNN is looking into Shirley's claims.
Now suddenly we have CNN putting in all this energy just to try and shut down Nick Shirley.
Oh, yeah.
We're from CNN. Can we talk to you? This is MAGA YouTuber Nick Shirley.
Right off the jump, immediately discounting their entire reporting. The fact that they said MAGA YouTuber. I'm going to play it again.
We're from CNN. Can we talk to you? This is MAGA YouTuber Nick.
Immediately you've just immediately your entire story, your entire opinion means nothing. If you have to start it off with MAGA YouTuber, which, by the way, we sat down and watched his entire video. It's on my channel. It's on my YouTube channel. We watched his entire video. Not once through the entire video did he do anything quote unquote MAGA. Yes, he is a political wolf mother. That's my point. That's the point I'm making. Through his entire investigation that he put out on YouTube, he was completely apolitical. There was absolutely zero politics involved. He was basically just looking at the daycare centers and the medical centers and investigating, like, are these actually legit? Are they actually real? And they're right off the jump going to call him MAGA. You've immediately your credit is like, you had next to no credit whatsoever, CNN. By saying he's a MAGA YouTuber when he's been apolitical in this entire report, boom, your credibility is out the fucking window. You had barely any to begin with, and now it's fucking gone. Everything you now say in your report after this is bullshit. Everything you say, everything this woman reporter says from this moment forward is going to be slanted. And we'll have probably less than zero facts involved. It's all going to be extremely left-leaning. It's all going to be completely skewed and is going to ignore actual facts that occur. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but since Nick's video came out, they've actually covered up the leering portion of the sign. You can see it right here. They've actually covered up the misspelling on the sign that has been on here for God knows how long. You know, the sign that's been sitting on this building for who knows how many months or how many years that had a blatant misspelling of of learning that has been covered up since his report came out. They didn't bother for the months or years that's been on the building beforehand. His report comes out, all of a sudden they're covering it up.
Nick Shirley.
There's the first tactic, MAGA content creator. How is Nick Shirley a MAGA content creator?
A MAGA content creator. He claims that he uncovered widespread fraud by Somali-run child care centers in the state.
Under your definition, would I be a MAGA content creator?
Yes. Yes. Warren, to simple answer your question, yes. With CNN, if you are not drinking the Democratic Kool-Aid, you are MAGA. Because with CNN, you have to be dogmatically goose-stepping with the left. If you are not goose-stepping with the left's ideology, the extreme left, I should point out, not even just like moderate. If you are not goose-stepping the extreme left ideology, you are MAGA. Hassan flat out said it. Hassan actually spilled the spaghetti out of it when it comes to people like him, people like CNN, all these people, is that anything right of his position is right. CNN's the same thing. If you are even a half an inch right of their political ideology when they report, because let's face it, they cannot report without having a severe political ideology bent to it in one direction. If you are even slightly right of that, you are alt-right, and therefore you are MAGA. Yeah, according to CNN, I am a MAGA VTuber. According to CNN, I am a MAGA VTuber. When you guys know I don't give a fuck about political sides, I'm dead fucking in the middle. And I go on logic, I go on reason, and I go on if it makes sense. And if it does make sense, I call you the fuck out on it. I've said plenty of things like, okay, there are some things on the left side that I agree with. There are some things on the right side that I agree with. I'm not leaning towards any side. I work with what makes sense. I work with what is logical, and that's fucking it. I have agreed with some of the things that Trump has done as president. I also think that Trump is an absolute fucking asshole and shouldn't hold the office because he is mentally deranged. He is a narcissistic sociopath. Newsflash, I can do both. You can, as a rational human being, think both. You could think that someone is when they're enacting public policy, you can agree with, but you can also agree with that the person behind the public policy is an absolute piece of shit. And I don't think that he has the mental fortitude or the mental capacity to be able to hold such a high public office. You can do both. It is possible. But according to CNN, I'm MAGA. And that's why nobody trusts CNN. That's why CNN has gone from once a basically a high benchmark of journalism, maybe 30, 40 years ago. 30, 40 years ago, CNN was considered maybe a high benchmark in terms of journalism. For a long time now, they are basically scraping the bottom of the barrel. Nobody trusts them. Absolutely nobody trusts CNN anymore, except for the people that are afflicted by the mind virus and basically just drink the Kool-Aid as their daily driver beverage. And anybody with even a lick of common sense does not trust CNN as far as you can throw it.
At a daycare in Minnesota, he alleged was a fraudulent facility in a now viral video.
By a creator who has shared
No, Zed, you're absolutely right. There isn't any major news agency that's trustworthy. That's why I've said that YouTubers are now the journalists of the 21st century. Mainstream media is dead. Nobody trusts mainstream media. What people trust now is people trust the independent YouTuber journalists for one very specific reason. They don't have corporate influencers and shareholders that they have to appease when they facilitate the reporting. That is the benefit of being a YouTuber journalist, because it doesn't matter, and they know this. It doesn't matter if its story may lean left, may lean right, may lean dead center. They know it doesn't matter. As long as eyeballs get on the video, that's all that matters. So they don't have, they're basically not audience captured. They're not corporate captured. They're not shareholder captured. They can report on whatever they want, and they can report the facts of it, even if it pisses people off. Even if it pisses off one particular kind of people, left or right, if it pisses people off, they don't care. Because they are not beholden to any of them. They are beholden only to themselves to basically put out a story that garners interest, that gets a lot of eyeballs on it, and therefore gets them ad revenue on whatever platform that they're using to produce their content. That has become the great equalizer, is that there's no one looking over their shoulder telling them what they should or should not talk about, how they should or should not talk about something. They are their own bosses. They can report however they wish. And now people trust YouTube, basically YouTube journalists, far more than they will ever trust a mainstream journalist. This is the age of the independent journalist.
Was a fraudulent facility in a now viral video.
By a creator who has shared anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim videos in the past, put a major national spotlight.
However,
yeah, I haven't seen his other videos. I've seen thumbnails of them. Yeah, he's made other videos talking about, like, the illegal immigration. And, of course, CNN has to dub that as anti-immigrant. He's, we may start watching some of his older footage. We may watch some of his older videos to see what he's done, to basically get, an equitable look at his other stuff. But it's the code for he did reports on illegal immigration, was probably saying, like, do you think illegal immigrants should be deported? Probably had a lot of people say yes, and all of a sudden he is considered anti-immigrant. Nice try with the spin, CNN. No one buys it. No one considers you legit journalists anymore. They haven't for a long time.
those so-called evidence comes from a man.
Sorry, Nguyen. He actually, you know what, Nguyen? He actually went to the Middle East. He actually flew to the Middle East, went to Palestine, was refused entry when he wanted to basically show what was happening in Palestine, show how the people were living, show how it affected, and he was refused entry. So he just basically tried to do the story as best he could from the outside looking in, keeping it neutral, and people cater to him. People classified him as anti-Palestine, pro-Israel, because he basically just reported on what he could neutrally. So he actually tried to put his money where his mouth is to basically show the other side, and they refused to allow it.
put a major national spotlight.
However, the so-called evidence comes from a man who has posted anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant content in the past.
This is going to be the tactic. I mean, can you point to an example? Where is the evidence that Nick Shirley is anti-legal immigration or anti-Muslim?
CNN's Whitney Wild speaks to the man behind that video and takes a look at his claims.
They can't.
So it's already so clear what they're trying to do here.
This is MAGA YouTuber Nick Shirley. Back at a daycare in Minnesota, he alleged was a fraudulent facility in a now viral video.
People are going to say this is a left or right issue, but no, fraud is fraud. And so I'm not out here trying to put a twist on things.
He's alleging that when he shows up, he does not see any kids and that no one will provide him any information on how to utilize those services.
Did you come during their normal operating hours when you came to visit?
I came at 11 a.m., I believe, and I also came the following day, later in the day.
This is going to be the biggest line of attack. Well, Nick, you did not come during their normal business operating hours, which they are now claiming is from, what, 2 or 3 o'clock until 10 p.m., which is strange for daycare. It could be possible.
I did see something. I don't know how factual this is, but there was someone pointing out that it online. And again, I have no idea if this is true or not, so take this with a very hefty grain of salt. Is supposedly daycare centers are not able to be in operation after 6 p.m. I think someone had said it is illegal for a daycare center to operate after 6 p.m. Now, I have no idea if that's true. I did not look up any legal statutes for it. But again, the very notion of a daycare center operates between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. is insane. Because the whole purpose of a daycare center is to basically be a place for working parents to drop their children off to be cared for while they're working. How many working adults start work at 2 p.m.? Yeah, and I think, and I believe that was a Minnesota law. I was not saying it was a federal law. I was saying it was a Minnesota law. I don't know if it's true or not. But how many working adults, on average, start work at 2 p.m.? The average working adult typically starts around 8 or 9 a.m. And they finish at around 5 or 6 p.m. That is the average working adult. Do swing shifts exist? Absolutely, they do. Absolutely, swing shifts do exist. There are some people that do work afternoon shifts. Absolutely. Now, if this daycare center had basically said they're operating from 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. until 10 p.m., that would make sense. But 2 to 10 only? That's not catering to the predominant demographic of working adults.
Oh, why are they coming at 2? That's not when elementary school ends and then you go into.
I don't know. Kids' schedules are so weird now. It's like sometimes they have half days on random
comes
days.
At 2?
People like Caleb Hammer are coming at this in a pretty balanced way.
The fact that I see people on Twitter right now defending this fraud because it's against the left-wing governor, that shows how just fucking locked in we are with ideologies. I don't give a fuck who it is. If there's fraud and my tax money is going there, being funneled from the federal government to their state for those assistance programs, it is going to fraud.
Revan, the internet is already, we've seen it. I got a fucking community guideline strike on YouTube for the video of people calling Caleb alt-right. Then he goes, I don't know if they went to first say MAGA, but they actually, there was that video that I got struck, that's up on Odyssey, that was full of people calling him alt-right, calling him, I can't remember if they were calling him anti-immigrant or not exactly, and I spent the entirety of that video discounting every fucking thing that they said. They're already a hair's breadth away from calling him MAGA. And I'm sure probably plenty of people do call him MAGA, but alt-right sounds more powerful to them because nowadays using MAGA means nothing. The word MAGA, realistically speaking, has lost all meaning. Nobody gives a shit anymore if you say MAGA. And in fact, nowadays, if you call someone MAGA, the person being called that is more likely to accept that with pride than to be insulted by it. So they're now, like, they've now downshifted back into the alt-right as their talking point of basically disparaging someone's character. Alt-right, Nazi, fascist, they've devolved back to that because MAGA didn't work. MAGA did not work anywhere near as much as the other. Let's be realistic here. None of it's working. Calling someone alt-right, calling someone Nazi, calling someone fascist, it means nothing now, which is exactly what the purpose was. Don't forget, that is the purpose of these people, was to destroy that language. And basically they turned and twisted that language so it's no longer a label to denotate an actual horrible human being who is ascribing to the ideologies of someone that tried to facilitate a literal genocide, or trying to describe, trying to describe a government that literally puts its populace under its boot, kind of like the UK is doing, because UK has turned into a fascist government. It's no longer to describe that. It's literally to dehumanize people that disagree with you and thus be able to appropriately paint a target on them for their followers to basically kill them. That's what this terminology has now been turned into. Excuse me. MAGA could be included in this. MAGA, Nazi, fascist, every istophobe in the book, those are no longer words that mean anything other than you don't agree with me, therefore you are not a human being, so I'm going to dehumanize you to make it okay for the people that follow my ideology who are fucked in the head to know that you are a viable target and can be taken out. That's what it's turned into. That's what all of this is turned into. It is turned into used to paint a target on someone's head. And it's being done with Nick. It's being done with Nick Shirley. They have used these words to literally paint a target on his head for their more deranged followers to try to kill him. That's why he's had to up his security, is because there are people that right now are probably planning to harm or kill him because he's going against their rhetoric. He's going against their ideology.
God, fuck you!
Looking at this from the outside, there are indicators that something is very strange here.
The point of it is not whether or not I came at the right time of their operation hours. The point is that blacked out doors, they can't give you any information. You call that number, no one answers. I wasn't trying to go inside, and there should be a way for somebody to actually be able to call that number and somebody to be able to answer. These aren't real businesses.
But surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a daycare.
But that's not what he's claiming. He's not claiming you should just be able to walk into a daycare. He's pointing out that he's not able to get any information.
I wasn't trying to go inside.
Not even like get information. He can't talk to anybody. He was saying that literally he had no means of talking to anyone at this supposed business. That's what he was saying. And she tried to do what CNN always does and tried to twist his words to try and say, well, surely a locked door at a daycare is not an unusual thing. He didn't say anything about that. He said there was no means for me to get in contact with anybody to talk to someone. That's what he said. And yes, every daycare will have a locked, it's not unusual for daycares to have the primary section area where the kids are to be locked. That's not unusual, but there is at least a reception area that would not be locked. There, at bare minimum, there is going to be a reception area for people to come in to bring their kids in, or for prospective parents that are looking at having their child come to this daycare, for them to go in and actually speak to someone like, hey, I'd like to sign my child up for daycare here. That would be unlocked. There is going to be a part of a daycare center that is unlocked, that is open to the public for people to come in to speak with employees or directors of a daycare business. Where the actual children are located, sure, that will be locked. Where the children are located, where the children are cared for, yes, that will be locked. That's understandable because even schools do that. But for you to actually speak with someone. And even if you want to go even the route of, well, in this day and age, even the lobbies or receptions might be locked off from the public because there is a threat of mass shootings these days. That's actually a perfectly legit argument to say even the lobbies could be locked off because there's a real threat of, these days of mass shooters basically busting into these kind of businesses to try and unfortunately kill children. We have seen it. And it would make legitimate sense to lock even the exterior door. Okay, even going that route, you would still be able to do a buzzer to get someone to come to the door to talk to them. You would still be able to get them on the phone. He could not even get them on the phone. That's what he said. And of course, CNN tries to twist his words on it.
But surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a daycare.
There should be a reception.
It is. No, every daycare is locked.
Their doors are locked.
And so, okay, you bring up a fair point. Then why can't they actually give me information how to enroll a child?
So they're claiming there is reception. When you look at the original video, we get a shocking moment. This is the response he got.
My name's Nick. We're doing a little documentary trying to find little Joey a spot to put himself in one of these centers here. Because there's the fraud. Yeah, because we want to make sure we're going to a legit business if we're going to bring our little boy Joey here.
This is not a Joey spot.
Uh-huh.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
This is not a Joey spot?
Ooh, buddy,
This is not a Joey spot?
I mean, it's not. It's like it's fine that you can go into the lobby of multiple daycares area in your area during business hours, and it's fine. It's like what I'm saying is if a daycare decided to like lock off even the reception because of of concern. That's not necessarily like I'll call it a deal breaker for me in terms of determining if a business is legit or not. Like, there are schools that you can't even get in the front door of a school without being buzzed in. So having the daycare, even the front door locked off and getting buzzed in, it's not like a deal breaker to say, oh, this is not a legitimate business or this is legitimate business. I'm sure there are many daycares that have their lobby open to the public and then where the children are is more secure. But having just the front door locked and needing to get buzzed in some respects, I can actually be okay with that. But we're not talking about just having the front door locked. It's also everything's blacked out. It's also you can't get anyone on the phone to even talk to someone. And then there was this clip right here, which was at a different daycare center, by the way.
What do you mean by that?
This is not a Joey spot?
Ooh, buddy.
This is not a Joey spot?
That is not what you wanted to say.
Yep.
Don't act like this is unreasonable to find this suspicious. They're forced to concede the fact that there is fraud occurring there and it has been being investigated.
Do you think that federal law enforcement hasn't done enough? I mean, they would say, look, these fraud cases have been going on, but they've already...
Do you think federal law enforcement hasn't done enough? Bearing in mind, they just uncovered within a week of Nick Shirley's report coming out, they just uncovered $9 billion in fraud going back to Somalia. I will repeat that. $9 billion of fraud was discovered in Minnesota that is being funneled back to Somalian terrorists. And she's going to ask, do you think federal law enforcement hasn't done enough? Again, lady, you're a moron. Okay, I snapped my spiel. Holy fuck, Lord Inquisitor! Okay, I had to hold back on that. I wanted to get that out. Lord Inquisitor, thank you so very much for the 50 gifted subs. Thank you so very much. So very much. I had to try and get out what I wanted to get out. I didn't want to derail on that one. I've said my thing now. But thank you so very much for the 50 gifted. Thank you. Thank you so much.
They've done like 80 indictments. The cases have been going on, for years.
I can't believe this is CNN's strategy. They've already been doing indictments, Nick. Why would you show up with a camera? This has been going on for so long. Why are you paying it?
Okay. It's been going on for so long. Bearing in mind the 9 billion. So here's where the CNN reporter is talking out of both sides of her mouth. The $9 billion in fraud that is being used to fund Somalian terrorist groups didn't come from the daycares. The $9 billion that has been reported on that was discovered in Minnesota came from Medicaid, came from autism charities, came from like food service type of like charities and stuff. None of the $9 billion in fraud was daycare. To the best of my knowledge, the daycare fraud was not included in that $9 billion. And in one day, Nick and the gentleman that he worked with discovered over $100 million in potential daycare fraud. That was not, as I understand it, included in the $9 billion that has already been disclosed. So she's literally talking out of both sides of her mouth. Haven't they done enough? Haven't federal law enforcement done enough? They took care of the $9 billion. They should just stop there. Why are you bothering to bring up another $100 million that has been stolen from taxpayers by these fraudulent Somalian daycare centers? Why are you still harping on this? They did the $9 billion thing. Can't you just leave it alone and let the Somali terrorists just keep funding their terrorist activities? She's literally talking out of both sides of her fucking mouth on this bullshit.
Attention to it. That's essentially the logic here.
Why did I show up one day in Minnesota and go to all these daycares, no children, they're receiving millions of dollars. We uncovered nearly $110 million in fraud in one day.
If you've been feeling run down lately, low energy, low stamina, it's time to support the systems that actually keep you strong. Juvenon just released something that can make a difference. It's called the Maximum Male System. Powerful two-step help flip your body's internal today. That's bloodflow7.com/Warren.
How do you know that all the allegations that you're making are true?
You can't know that. It's such a trick question. He's pointing out suspicious activity, appearance, and behavior. Nick does.
Yes, and that's exactly the point. He actually said that to the reporter. I provided my reporting. I provided my reporting. I gave you my videographic evidence of what I uncovered when I did my investigation. It is up to you to interpret that. And it is up to federal law enforcement investigators to interpret it. Not, as she said,
trick.
How do you know that all the allegations that you're making are true?
He's not a cop. That's the ever-loving point. He is not a cop. It's not up to him to determine if the allegations are true. That is the job of a federal law enforcement investigator, to be able to dig a hell of a lot deeper than he, as an independent YouTube journalist, can. What he did is he basically got the ball rolling. He said, look, we have in public records, we have all this money going to these daycare centers. When we go to these daycare centers, they're not in operation. You can't get a hold of them. Or when you talk to them and ask them about enrolling a child, they say, oh, no, you can't enroll a child here. This is not a place for you. So he's getting the ball rolling by saying there is suspicious activity, that there is potential fraud happening here, and there's suspicious activity. He is not a cop. It is now up to law enforcement to take that ball and run with it and actually start issuing subpoenas, actually start issuing warrants for documentation, actually start issuing warrants for records on all of these businesses, and actually to conduct an investigation. So CNN is getting on their high horse going, well, why didn't you just go vigilante and start digging around and digging around in the records that you would require a warrant for to determine if this is true or false? And again, trying to fucking discredit him when all he's done is just provide videographic evidence that something may be going wrong here, that there is potential fraud happening here based on what we have uncovered, and now it's up to law enforcement to take over from here, because that's their fucking job.
You can't know that. It's such a trick question. He's pointing out suspicious activity, appearance, and behavior. Nick does a good job pointing out, I can't know that for sure. You have to. All I can show you is what I see and what I think is suspicious.
Exactly.
And you think for yourself. The investigations will occur and come to the conclusion.
Well, we showed you guys what was happening, and then you guys can go ahead and make your own analysis.
We're coming so we can make our own analysis. Are you 100% sure you're true?
Are you I don't even know what this means. Are you listen to what you just said there. Are you
It was it was a gotcha. She was trying to gotcha him. She was trying to get him to say, well, I can't possibly know if it's all true or not. Because again, he's not law enforcement. He doesn't have the power of the subpoena. He doesn't have the power of the warrant. So he can't say with 100% accuracy it's true. And she was going to use that to try and discredit him and say, oh, so well, you can't possibly know true. So this could all be, you could be completely wrong about everything that you report on, right? That's what she was trying. She was trying to get him to backpedal on his reporting. And thank God, Nick was too smart for her. Nick, the 20-something-year-old YouTuber, is smarter than the quote-unquote seasoned journalist.
% sure you are true?
So we can make our own analysis. Are you 100% sure you're true?
Nick even answers it the way she asks it. Yes, I'm 100% sure I am true.
Yeah, I am 100% sure I'm true.
CNN is looking into Shirley's claims.
Hi, my name is Whitney Wild. I'm a correspondent for CNN.
We reached out to several of the daycares featured in the now viral video. Only one daycare facility answered and said they are a legitimate business.
Thank you, Alacar. Thank you for the 5 gifted. And yes, only one. By the way, notice which one they didn't talk about. Yeah, one actually answered the phone and said, of course, we're legitimate. Yeah, because they're going to tell you over the phone. And, they're going to tell anybody, Van. Okay, hi, Van. Welcome, and thank you so much for the 5 gifteds. Is this bitch really this stupid? That she expects a fraudulent daycare center to pick up the phone, and when someone asks, she's doing exactly what she was trying to discredit him. Where he was just talking about are you a legitimate daycare center? And she's literally doing the same thing. Are you legitimate? But it's okay because I'm CNN, so I can do that. And of course, the one that they were able I'm getting cryptic, I'm getting it. The one that they were able to get through to, oh yes, of course we're legitimate. Because yeah, they're going to say, no, we're actually a fraudulent daycare center, please send the police here. Where's your fucking head, sweetheart? And secondly, yeah, notice they didn't mention, if they said that they called the ones that were in his video, notice they didn't talk about the one, at least yet, I don't know, we still have a couple minutes left of this. They didn't talk about the one daycare center where if you call the phone number on the side of the building, it routes you directly to Tim Walz's office. It routes you directly to the governor's office of Minnesota. Doesn't route you to daycare. Doesn't leave you a voicemail for daycare. You call the number, it's picked up by the office of Governor Tim Walz. Notice they didn't mention that.
Video. Only one daycare facility answered and said they are a legitimate business.
Oh, well, they said they're a legitimate business, so nothing to see here.
Minnesota Republicans say despite the new focus from the Trump administration, they have been sounding the alarm on fraud for years.
Then why would you find this so unbelievable?
At the daycare where Shirley showed back up, a stream of children walk inside.
Oh! Miraculously, when his video goes fucking viral, all of a sudden, people start showing up with kids. Which, don't forget, we've seen, I don't know if I showed it on screen. There's video footage of people going into these daycare centers with children. They go in there, basically maybe sign them in, and then several minutes later leave with the children. And some employees even followed some of these parents out and gave them an envelope, which is suspected to have been kickback money. They actually gave, it's suspected that they're giving these parents that bring their child in, sign saying, yes, I brought my child in, and then leave. And then the employees give them an envelope that may potentially be have money contained in it as some sort of like a kickback for the parents for basically contributing to the scam.
It's very strange because I have heard that this place was already closed.
You're saying that this is a fraudulent daycare. There's kids being dropped off right now.
Yes, the Commissioner of Children literally said a week ago this place was closed.
Did you know
They're
that?
showing face right now.
A viral video.
You can see how strange the editing is.
Yep.
CNN has no response. They just cut away.
Disputed claims and their full fallout remains to be seen.
And when all else fails, CNN tries to give the credit to the investigations that are already going on to Biden.
Dozens of fraud cases that DOJ is touting began during the Biden administration.
And now suddenly when we're talking,
And of course, CNN tries to make it sound political. Just as a reminder, everybody, the DOJ is an apolitical, government body. The Department of Justice is apolitical. It does not do politics. It does not fucking matter whose administration is in power at the time. The DOJ doesn't fucking care. It doesn't concern itself with politics in any way, shape, or form. They deal with law, they deal with criminal justice. They don't deal with politics. So I don't give a fuck if it was the DOJ under Biden. I don't give a fuck if it was the DOJ under Trump. I don't give a fuck if it was the DOJ under Obama. I don't care if it was the DOJ under Bush, Reagan, none of them. I don't care. The DOJ is apolitical. Politics has no place in the DOJ ever.
in the context of Biden, there is a massive fraud scheme, and it was blown open by Biden.
Back in 2022, the U.S. Attorney's Office for Minnesota announced 47 indictments for this massive fraud scheme. Since then, they've indicted more than 30 more people, and in total, they have secured at least 56 convictions. Whitney.
Okay. And within the last 2 weeks, they discovered $9 billion of fraud. Like, who fucking cares? So you arrested some people. So they arrested some people back in 2022, maybe 2023. Who cares? We're dealing with the $9 billion of fraud that is being used to fund terrorism in Somalia. We don't give a fuck about the fraud. And by the way, notice that she didn't mention the dollar amounts of the fraud. She said there was fraud discovered by quote-unquote Biden's DOJ back in 2022 and that there were arrests made. Notice there was no dollar amount ascribed to it. She didn't mention that there was fraud in the amount of X amount of dollars. So maybe the fraud that was uncovered back then was maybe a couple $100 million. The fraud that's been discovered now is $9 billion, and we know that it's being used to fund terrorism. Nothing was said about the fraud that was discovered back in 2022, 2023. She didn't mention what the amount was and what the fraud was being used for. Was it used for personal enrichment? Was it being used to fund a foreign nation? That hasn't been mentioned. Thank you, Verdi. So it's $250 million in fraud that was discovered in 2022. Chat, my math is a little rusty. Is $250 million more or less than $9 billion? My math's a little rusty on this one, but I'm pretty sure $9 billion is a little bit more than $250 million that was uncovered back in 2022. Now, I'm just a silly little VTuber, but I'm pretty sure $9 billion's more than $250 million.
Wild, CNN, Minneapolis.
If all of that has occurred, why would you be so surprised that it's occurring now? This doesn't make logical sense.
CNN's Whitney Wild is in Minneapolis.
Because it's not about logic,
Whitney,
it's about pushing a narrative.
This has been a problem in Minnesota for many, many years. You can.
Okay. It's been this has been a problem in Minnesota for many, many years. So why are you suddenly taking issue with the fact that a YouTuber exposed that Somalian daycare centers and medical centers are fraudulent. Why are you now suddenly taking issue and trying to discredit a YouTube journalist who did your job about 1,000 times better than you ever could just because they're Somalians? She just said, this has been a problem for years, but now we have a problem with it because it goes against the message. It goes against the diversity. It goes against, oh, we want as many illegal immigrants in this country as possible to vote for the Democrats. That's why they have an issue with it.
Look it up yourself. Fraud continues to simply plague the Minneapolis area and Minnesota at large.
Why would a massive fraud investigation ever be a bad thing? If you're not committing fraud, there's nothing to worry about. Why does this bother
absolutely,
CNN?
Atanashi. Absolutely.
That is a little weird. But instead, she falls back into her ideology, and nothing can be a scam, nothing can question, nothing with the Somali population. There's nothing weird. All government funding is perfect. There's no issues whatsoever.
Yes, Stone, you're right. Federal government has frozen all funding to Minnesota. My guess is we're going to hear about more states having their funding frozen as well in the midst of these fraud investigations. Yeah, right now, Minnesota has lost all funding for their daycare systems in its entirety while the investigation is happening. And now that we're seeing more and more of these thousands of fraudulent daycare centers popping up in multiple states, do not be surprised if you start hearing announcements that multiple states are getting federal funding frozen while investigations are conducted into these states for these thousands upon thousands of fraudulent daycare centers that are costing taxpayers literally hundreds of millions, potentially billions of dollars.
What went wrong here? What actually went wrong here?
I don't think we should paint with broad brushes, but the reality is this fraud was rampant within the Somali community. We cannot disassociate what's been happening.
Wait, but what do you? What do you think should happen as a result of that?
What do you mean?
He's opening himself up to hackers, to physical threats, and he knows that this is going to get worse. This is just the beginning.
Yeah. And notice CNN just then tried to shut it down when he said it's no. Hang on, let me pull that last little bit up.
What do you mean?
Listen to what he says.
The reality is this fraud was rampant within the Somali community. We cannot disassociate what's been happening.
But what do you?
And he said there is massive amounts of fraud rampant within the Somali community. Her response, so what? That is her response. The CNN reporter. There is rampant fraud throughout the Somali community. So what? That's it right there. That's fucking it right there. It's fucking ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It's like this is going to blow up. This is going, metaphorically speaking, of course. This is going to blow up. We're going to start seeing more and more states get their funding frozen as more and more of this fraud starts coming to light. We are, as wild as this is, we are at the tip of the iceberg. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We are about to see this blow up on a massive scale. Just wait.